Bob writes about it. Jim talks about it. But Chuck did something about it.
Foreman on a big hole across the 10. He's something else. He's out in touchdown land. He's something else, baby.
Now, here's longtime columnist Bob Sansevier, Fox 9's Jim Rich, and the great number 44,
Double 4.
Chuck Foreman.
Welcome to the JimBob Sports Jamboree with Vikings legend Chuck Foreman. This show brought to you by 10K Construction. Minnesota is the land of 10K Construction, and a couple of wonderful guests joining us this week. Justin Peterson of Tires Plus Buffalo, Wilmer and Alexandria. In Alexandria, it's Ultimate Tire, of course, right behind Menards. And also Tony Denucci. And why would Tires Plus and Tony Denucci, world-famous wrestler, be ganging up? Well, they've got something up their sleeve that's going to be very entertaining. We're going to get to that as well. And we're also going to talk about the NFL going to an 18-game schedule. How would that work? Would Chuck Foreman sign up for an 18-game schedule?
Chuck Foreman would not.
Really?
Oh, well, of course, that depends, though.
The paycheck.
Compensation. Yeah, right, the compensation. Yeah, let's not say I wouldn't, but that's going to be a difficult thing. Well, like I said, if the money's right, everybody's going to go for it.
That's true.
And that's the way it goes.
All right, Justin, you're a consumer of the National Football League product.
Correct.
18-game schedule. Would that be too much football? Or would that be something that you feel would water down the product to the point where it wouldn't be as exciting as it is every week because there's just such a small, finite number of games, so every Sunday mattered? When you get to that size of a schedule, is there weeks where, you lose one, it's not a big deal?
I think the games will still have a ton of meaning. Going down the stretch, it's going to be, the same thing as far as teams trying to get in the playoffs and so forth. So I think the meaning will still be there. Maybe a little bit more time to get things rolling, which might benefit our Vikings team.
The wear and tear on these players, do you think it would diminish the level of play?
It's kind of a tough question, but I feel if they went to 18 games, I don't think the fan base would be there as much. I think the quality of the games would not be as intense because you're going to have more injuries. There's more wear and tear on the players. I think they're good staying where they are.
Chuck, what would it be like to go 18? You played 12, right?
When I first got,
and then it went to 14.
It went to 14, and that was a long season in itself. And then you consider the playoffs, how long that takes.
Right, they've added levels of the playoffs,
and then you'll be cutting into like basketball season, and then you're going to have that competition. Are you going to watch basketball, football? I don't know. It's a lot of things to think about, but in the end, it's all about the money.
Right.
They want more money, and the networks are saying, we'll give you more money, give us more product.
Pardon the Interruption podcast talking about this, and he says that's where we're headed. Because you could see the handwriting on the wall. Already the National Football League has gotten rid of a preseason game. They'll wipe out another one, so you'll be down to one preseason game, go with 18 games. And he says you'll need 2 buys. Would that be something that would perhaps help maintain the level of play, Chuck, if the teams had 2 weeks off?
If they add another game, they're definitely going to have another bye week, no question. The players' health has to be top priority if you're going to give out the best product. And so I think they'll have to add another bye week.
All right. So Burrow came up with the idea of the Pro Bowl, moving it to week 13 of the NFL season. So everyone has the same bye week. The other bye would just float around like it does now, where you have 4 or 5 teams off on any given Sunday. He wants a Pro Bowl in the middle of the season, week 13, like Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL. Everybody else does it that way.
Oh, well, football's a different thing. You're talking about 5 games that are left to play, right?
Yep.
Okay, now how you know you're a Pro Bowl player just in 13 games?
Right. Well,
I mean, like,
so
I don't see how that's going to work.
he said they do some what, Justin, 7-on-7 stuff. You heard that interview
Yeah,
too. 7-on-7, and then the
Players
skills thing that
challenge.
they do now.
Well, they don't. They like you say. The Pro Bowl is not like a game anymore, and that which is good in my opinion. If that they go into the skills tests and things like that, that's a good thing. So I guess whenever they do have it, I guess when I think about it that way, why not?
All right, you were talking before we started about when you had the Pro Bowl,
Right.
and there was conversations
Right.
among the players.
Right.
Going into it.
There was unspoken words. They look, if I'm up, they would never hit you if you were standing up. And then when they did hit you, it never was below the waist.
Okay.
That was what was supposed to happen. That was just unspoken. You never did that. You never, you never did anything that you would do in a normal game as far as the physicality goes. And that was just every now and then there might have been a freak accident or something like that. But no, the Pro Bowl, from what I know, when I was there, the 5 times I was there, it was like, hey, this is a game, but tone it down. No, really,
And then what did the guys tell you though then?
Huh?
You said, so then what did the defensive players say to you? You said like, okay,
Oh, yeah,
we're not
well,
going to
yeah.
annihilate each
Yeah,
other.
yeah, we're not going to do that, but don't you do that spin thing. And that's what they were telling me. Hey, look, don't do that. Because they just was, this wouldn't have been, I would have too, but no, I didn't. There's plenty of opportunity to, because as far as the guys go, they were giving 100%, but they weren't going to do anything like come at you like they would normally do. I could have just done that, but no, I had to put that one on hold.
All right, Tony, I want to ask you about, it seems like the NFL, especially with linemen, and Chuck, you can weigh in on this as well, they seem to like wrestlers. It seems to have now, they look at college wrestlers. We talked about this last week with Mike Morris about how Brock Lesnar tried to make that transition. Mike Zimmer liked linemen that were wrestlers.
Gable Steveson.
Yeah, Gable
Yeah.
Steveson now with the Buffalo Bills. Thank you. That's
Valley.
But leverage.
Yep.
Leverage has a big thing with the wrestler.
So what is that? Go ahead, Chuck. You finish your thought, and then we'll get Tony.
Okay.
How that transitions, because now that seems to be a real asset for these guys when they draft players.
All right, well, I'm just going to tell you what I think. I think, number one, they got great leverage, I think. And then number two, especially when we're talking about the offensive line and defensive line, they got an edge to them. A real big edge. So that part of it, I think, separates them and why they get to, they can overcome some other shortcomings because, there's no quit.
Right.
And they come at you, and there's nothing you can do physically that's going to bother them because, well, you've seen them. I wouldn't do what they do. But no, on the real side, I think they bring something different.
Tony?
So you're asking me why pro
Well,
football
it seems like now the NFL is looking almost as when they're trying to weed out, well, we'll take this guy over that guy because he had wrestling in his background. I'm talking college wrestling, high school wrestling, any form of that aspect in their background. They see that. Mike Zimmer always talked about that he loved having wrestling guys on his lines, that he felt that they had some attributes that were more valuable to him.
Another thing too with the wrestlers, it's a one-on-one competition. Yep. It's like it's either you or me. And I'm telling you, that whole attitude there is a lot different than when you have you're relying on the entire offensive line. It's got to be, they all got to be in sync. But when you get a guy that's used to that one-on-one competition, his attitude to overcome anything the guy's going to do to him is different, I think.
Tony?
Yeah, well, the athleticism in wrestling, I mean, you're using every muscle in your body for the periods that you're wrestling, and you're relying, what Chuck said, on only yourself.
Right.
And the endurance is unbelievable. I think they're looking at them because they're unbelievable athletes. Every wrestler that has come into professional wrestling that I know has made good money in the business because they were great athletes. Brock Lesnar, phenomenal wrestler, high school, college, you name it. Kurt Angle was my first dark match with WWE. That guy's an animal. No, that guy, we did a belly-to-belly suplex. He threw me from one corner to another in a 20-foot ring. I went from one corner to the other. And I'm 242 pounds, and he threw me like I was 140 pounds. I didn't go up for him the next time. I let him throw me on his own. So yes, I think they look at wrestlers because of the athleticism. And I will say this too, the head to the nose to the grinder. They're hard workers. Every wrestler I know. There's no laziness in wrestling. You can't be lazy in wrestling. When I was wrestling, I weighed. I was about 200 pounds in high school, and I wrestled at 167. They wouldn't do that today. I literally was starving myself because I was so dedicated. Wrestling at 167, it was unbelievable, the weight loss that I had to cover. And then I was back up to 200 pounds during football season. You had,
Right.
I did it. And there was no question asked. I just did what the coach asked me. And I think wrestlers' attitudes are that way. What's the word I'm looking for? They're hard workers. They're dedicated. They're
Attitude, it's
Commitment.
commitment. They're committed. That's what it is. And I feel that's why the other sports like wrestlers, because of the fact of the culture that it is.
That makes sense. But as you always said, it's what's inside.
Right.
That's the intangible when you draft players.
Yeah.
That they have the size, the skill, the speed, but if they don't have something inside of them
Right.
that makes them committed, as Tony said.
Like we say, you can measure a guy's speed. You can see how high he jumps, how much weight he lifts. Only thing you can't measure is what's inside.
Yep.
And I've seen guys that look great. When I was in training camp, I told you, look great, run. I've seen linemen come in there. They just look like they were chiseled. But when they got, against Carl Eller or Jim Marshall or all those guys, Alan Page, it was like they didn't have a heart. They looked good, but they didn't have that it.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about.
Yep, exactly.
It's something that you got to have to be successful, and those guys don't. So when you measure, you can measure all that other stuff, but that's the one thing you can't measure, the heart. You got to see it. You got to show it. And a lot of guys, they show it. They show you they don't have it.
That's true. All right. When we come back, why Tony and Justin are here and what's coming up where you can watch some professional wrestling under the stars with one of the greatest ring announcers, I think.
Oh, he's the best. The best of the best.
We'll get into that and much more. You're listening to the JimBob Sports Jamboree with Vikings legend Chuck Foreman, presented by 10K Construction. Minnesota is the land of 10K Construction. Go to their website, 10kconstruction.com, or you can call them. They'll answer the phone immediately. They'll get to you, and they are the way to go if you have storm damage or want to improve your home. We'll take a break. Back with more right after this.
On behalf of Vikings legend Chuck Foreman and Fox 9's Jim Rich, I'm Bob Sansevier, and I want to say thank you to all of our listeners and our radio partners, KXRA in Alexandria, KRWC in Buffalo, KDHL in Faribault and Owatonna, KDAL and WDSM in Duluth, WNMT in Hibbing, KTOE in Mankato, AM 660 The Bear, WBHR in St. Cloud, and Wild 102 FM in Roseau. Also, KWOA AM FM in Worthington, and KKBJ in Bemidji, and Bob Total Country serving the Twin Cities of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and surrounding areas. We'll talk to you later.